Hello, it's Anna and Sophie from Soundyard here. We make Chris Skinner's Countryside podcast, and we've got something very exciting to share with you. We have a new service that's being launched, and it's called Spoken Stories.
Spoken Stories is all about recording the voices and memories of your loved ones in outstanding quality, so they can be enjoyed for generations to come. For example, you know the story that Grandma tells that everyone in the family has heard before. Well, Spoken Stories is about getting those stories down and preserving them for your family history. Spoken Stories is about gifting someone the time to capture these personalities and unique voices.
We record your loved ones' tales, whether it's their whole life story so far or something more specific like a life-changing event. It is a gorgeous experience, and what you're left with is a beautiful monologue that really captures the essence of that person.
Think of it like an audio portrait, and take a listen to a snippet of this one from Diane's spoken story, recorded in her beautiful garden.
I was born in 1951 at Newmarket, and unfortunately I didn't see Mum for a year. I was looked after by a lovely nurse called Diane, my name, because my mum had TB when I was born. And so my mother never worked because with her problem with her, lungs, she had to go and have it sort of pumped up every so often. She used to do a lot of dressmaking, so she always made our clothes years ago. But yeah, she was a lovely mum, yeah, and Dad as well, yeah. That's very nice childhood I had, yeah, very nice. Yeah. I got married February the 16th, 1974. The weather was gorgeous. I ended up having to put on a big sort of T-shirt under my wedding dress I didn't need. I had a lovely one of those transparent umbrellas in case it rained, and it was just a beautiful day. I think I'm always sort of quite cheerful. I mean, if I go down the Luke and deliver some eggs to somebody, I'll meet somebody and chat, and then Paul say, "Where have you been?" I said, "I've been chatting to people." That's just my way. That's just how I am. We've always lived here. We had this built in 1974. They put the footings down in February and we moved in the August. Years ago, I used to go around the village on a bike, and when I had Ian, he'd sit on the back. We live in a lovely area. We've got lovely neighbours. They help us all out, which you all do with neighbours, and that's very, very nice. And as I said to Paul, I'm hoping we can keep this place on until, well, I don't want to move from here until I go out in a brown box. I hope that's not too soon.
If you'd like more information about Spoken Stories and to take advantage of our special introductory offer, you can head to www.soundyard.org/spoken stories.
And keep listening after this episode with Chris, and you'll hear another example of a spoken story. It's a view of the world from a 6-year-old.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to this week's podcast. And it's not quite time for Matthew to come to the farm yet, but already somebody has arrived. And High Ash Farm, it's quite shocking for me, really, because people suddenly turn up from different parts of the world. I have had Tom from Toronto. I've had Tamsin from Tasmania, south of Australia. And this morning, believe it or not, 2 people have walked up the farmyard, and it's Greg and Mary, and we've had a little look round the farm. So tell us what you think, Mary.
Oh, fantastic, Chris. It's an absolute pleasure to be here and actually meet you in person.
Oh, thank you very much. Is the journey worth it all that way?
Absolutely. And Greg?
Well, we've heard so much about it, and now to see it in reality is absolutely fantastic. And you're the highlight, actually. Of all the things we've seen, meeting you's been the highlight.
I thought the buzzards would top trump me.
They were very good.
Or
but
the sparrows.
You topped them.
Oh, right. I top trumped a buzzard.
Yeah.
Right.
And all the years of Greg and my brother Bruce listening to the podcast, to meet you in person.
Yes, that's the impressive thing.
It's the impressive thing.
In the past, I've broadcast on local radio, and it stays pretty much in the county of Norfolk. And I've done a year's worth of podcasts now, and what I hadn't realised, that it goes anywhere in the world. It's made the world quite small, but for you to travel that huge distance that you have done, and on cycles as well, sorry about my bad sense of humour, but that's quite impressive. And so thank you very much. We've had a flying visit round the farm, and it's always a pleasure to show what's here and to show you how you can share the modern environment with the wildlife that makes it its home. So we've looked at the past, the sort of Romans and the Saxons and their occupation here, and I think and hope it gives you some sort of hope for the future, I would like to say, and there we are. Anyway, I'm waiting for Matthew to come along and start the podcast off professionally. And thank you hugely, both of you, Greg
Chris,
and Mary, for coming
thank you so much.
all that
It's been
way.
wonderful.
Well done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chris Skinner's Countryside Podcast with Matthew Gudgeon.
Horse having a haircut. Welcome to a high ash farm with Chris Skinner, who's he's invited me along to have a look at various things here today, but and there's Rat as well.
Yes.
And everything seems calm and under control.
Yes, often it's very suspicious at this time of the year, because I can remember back, well over 30 years now, was it 1987, around about the 16th, 17th of October, looking round High Ash Farm at the moment, it's all well organised, but back then, one night, it was chaos. The wind blew one way, and I did manage to record it. It's the famous hurricane. And then it went like this, completely still and quiet, like it is at the moment. There's no hurricanes forecast today, fortunately. And then the wind came back and blew the opposite direction. The trees were all in full leaf, as they are at the moment. We're standing underneath an oak tree right in the centre of the farmyard.
One that survived.
The one that survived. Oaks were well rooted, but a lot came out by their roots. Probably because there'd been 2 or 3 inches of rain ahead of that wind, and although the trees didn't snap off, many of them, what did happen is the soil was so sodden, the root plate where all the soil and the roots on just peeled up, and just the other side here in the farmhouse gardens there were 12 beautiful cedar trees, and the whole lot came over. I just left one, number 13, survived. So instead of being unlucky, that was lucky, and it took me 3 years to clear it all up, really. But basically had to give the timber away. There were some magnificent cedar trunks, and sadly we just cut them up, and there was a huge digger came in for a month. Oh, that was an acorn coming off the oak tree right above us.
Here it is, yep.
You found it.
Bouncing onto the tin roof.
Yes, there's a tin roof above the farm loo. And it's good job nobody's in there. They think they're being shot at. And there's a terrific crop of acorns this year. And the slight breeze that just got up then loosened one of the acorns in their cups, and they almost fire them out. And you can see along the concrete edge here, I'm going to pick Rat up because he's not getting enough. Talk about spoilt child, that dog. Many of the acorns have dropped. So it was a good 20 years ago. I gathered the acorns up under this particular oak tree because they were easy to sweep up, and they went to the local primary school, part of a maths lesson, and the poor children had to count the acorns, and we got to 72,000. I'll just pick this. Nobody's not going to let me pick him up.
He doesn't want to be picked up, does
No.
he? What does he want?
I'm not sure what he wants. He wants to go out on the farm and do some proper podcasting.
Well, we're in the farmyard at the
Yes.
moment.
And you can see on the roof here, there's lots of acorns, and if I put my hand along the little gutter. Let's pick some up out of the gutter. Here we go. And there's a bit of moisture in the gutter.
You've got a good harvest there.
And they're really lovely and fresh. And in the gutter, we've had a few showers as well. A little bit of moisture. There we are.
That lovely light brown colour with a tinge of green on either side. Oh, that one's starting to germinate.
Yes, exactly. And surprises everybody just how quickly acorns germinate. And the jays will come and pick them. This is the time of the year there's this terrific relationship between oak trees and jays. Jays are a member of the crow family, and all over the farm when we're out doing the rest of the podcast probably bump into jays this afternoon. Very colourful members of the crow family. But the relationship is between the jay and oak trees is jays have a specially enlarged esophagus. Don't look at me like that. It's just this double chin is normal for Norfolk. And what they do, they swallow 2 or 3 acorns, sometimes 4, and carry the 5th one in their beak. And this urge makes them do that. It's a kind of caching urge, and they will go out onto the grass and they'll use molehills and they'll tuck the acorns in for fodder for the winter. But being what jays are, they sometimes forget where they've made all the caches, and that's the start of the next generation of oak trees, because jays don't damage them. Squirrels will. Look, would you come here and I'll pick you up?
He's seen his nemesis over there, the family of geese.
Yes. Oh, that's what it is upsetting him. Yes, they have a mutual dislike of each other, the 6 geese, and they'll chase each other all day, given half the chance. So this is the start of the next generation of acorns, and I think it's absolutely fabulous just to see that little shoot. I don't know if we got any others. The shoot comes out the top. That one's just beginning to split, and
it's red, isn't it? There?
Yes, it is. So when you see an acorn split in half, when they're ready to germinate like that, the centre of it turns scarlet red, which is really interesting. I was just looking down the row here, see if we could see any others with that wonderful red colour. I'll pop these out.
Here's a split one. I don't know.
Yes,
it's red inside.
Look, that's
isn't
orangey red. That one now beginning to turn, but because it landed on the concrete, that was enough to split the acorn into its 2 halves. But what's amazing about what we talk about when we do the podcast is, right, I'll gather an acorn and I'll take it to the Food Research Institute and say, could you analyse it for me? Analysis will come back and say, Mr. Skinner, your acorn, 82% water, 10% protein, 2% carbohydrate, and that's about it. And of course, it's no relationship between, the physical analysis of an acorn and what we're standing next to. This weighs 3 or 4 grams. And that fellow above our heads, the oak tree, she weighs about 25, 30 tons, that one.
But she came out of that originally.
Exactly. But this acorn, in my head, contains all the knowledge of an oak tree. And that's the bit that the scientists kind of miss.
It's the magic.
It is. That's why natural history is so wonderful about all the creatures that we see each week when we're just driving round. And there we are. So that starts our podcast off nicely, because that fella's probably 250 years old. So no electricity back then. No idea what a telephone was, hardly any transport, probably oxen ploughing the fields, horses perhaps ploughing the fields here, and how we have changed the world that we live in. And that's why it's important, beyond belief, to make space for nature, to let natural history have its rightful place in our world, as well as the other way round.
From small acorns, etc., etc. The horse has had his hair cut now.
Yes, I can see the scissors going.
It's a short back and sides.
Why the girls cut their horses' hair at this time of the year? It's sort of, I have no idea, because we're now coming into the coldest part of the year. I think it's because when they ride them, the horses get a bit sweaty, and if they're clipped, which is what that lady was doing, you can ride them, and then you put a rug on them afterwards. But it makes an awful lot of work, and an awful lot of mess in the farmyard. They have to clear it all up, but it's brilliant stuff for birds to nest with. So sometimes I put some in a bag and keep it till next spring.
You can stuff your sofa with it.
Exactly, yes, or my bed.
A large field on the Stoke Holy Cross side of High Ash Farm, and we've left the pickup to one side and then crossed an electric fence, Chris.
Yes.
And there's a reason you've got the electric fence up.
They've arrived. The Berrichon de Cher cross mules.
Sheep.
101 ewes in front of us. And they're all looking at us rather suspiciously because they've only been here 2 or 3 days, and they wonder if they're going to be moved again. And each year we have sheep arrive at the farm. None of them at all are mine. They belong to a young farmer who's starting off as a shepherd, and kind of as a thank you and wanting to help somebody on the next rung of the farming ladder, we kind of have a young gentleman's agreement, I suppose. I'm not the young gentleman, you understand. And the deal is he puts his sheep on the hay fields after the hay's been mown in July and August. It then regrows like this, and we've got about 4 to 6 inches of grass growth, you can see down there. It's a nice tight sward. The hay was cut and it was all removed. And to save us mowing the fields, because if you keep the grass mown, you create something called perpetual spring, and that's what your lawn is, if you like. If you've got a lawn,
I think there is one somewhere under there.
and if you keep it topped like that, the grass when it comes through next spring is much denser. It kind of uses a word which we use in farming a lot, which is called tillering. And when you graze the grass down, it compensates by sending out lots of side shoots. So we just look down at the grass here. It's not been nibbled off yet. You can see there's a clump of, this is Italian ryegrass, and there's several other species of grass here. This one is probably tall meadow fescue here. That's cocksfoot there, this with these big bluish tight, tall green leaves, and there's a really nutritious one in this sward, and it's called Timothy. Now, those all graze down to the ground, and there's some clover here, look. That's white clover, going very close to the ground. So grazing it all off encourages the tillering. And then he will move from the hay fields. There's about 100 acres of permanent hay grass here for the horse livery. And then we move on to the wildflower fields, and again the same things happen. The sheep will graze that down, and they will leave around about Valentine's Day or a couple of weeks later than that, sort of towards the end of February anyway. So they'll be here over the winter months, and at that point they'll all be ready to lamb. So in a week's time, all these ewes will be introduced to some Texels, the boys. Texels also Berrichon de Cher, so they're crossbreed.
So they're rams, are they?
They're the rams. There'll be half a dozen rams come in here, and they will serve all those ewes. And the idea is to have all the lambing quite close together. So you if it's straddled out over a long period of time, but that can happen because if some of the ewes don't become pregnant on the first serving, and you have to wait another month. So it can spread out a little bit, but the idea is to get all the next spring's lambs all in a batch. And the Berrichon de Cher species of lamb, which is a French breed, there was a huge wool shortage in France towards the end of the 1800s, and we started to import them because they're a dual-purpose breed, and they're very good meat production, and also the wool way back then was a very valuable product. It's nowhere near the value it is today. A lot of Norfolk wealth was created from wool.
In medieval times, we were the richest area because of that, weren't we?
Certainly were. All this grassland around, before it was all ploughed up and became arable crops. We got a village on the north side of Norwich, the other side of Norwich to where we're sitting, only about 20 miles away. It's called Worstead, and that's a particular weave that you would have. And of course, all the parts of the sheep, whether it's sheepskin to help keep you warm, the leather was used, and the meat was really, really valuable. But the most important product of all was the wool itself, and how it's changed. And wool, it actually costs more in some cases in the UK to shear the sheep than is the value of the wool. That's how much the price has crashed, really.
But it's great material, and it makes wonderful clothing, and people even use it in cavity wall insulation.
Absolutely. Well, it's a new use for it, and of course it is fabulous for that, and it really does a bit. It keeps the sheep warm. They're out here in the howling wind if we get them. We're quite high up where we're on at the moment. We're on top of a hill.
It's exposed.
It's very exposed, and they will rotate round the farm, and they're very, very well behaved. So the ewes, there's all there is around them are 3 strands of electric fence, and they're very, very content. And once this has grazed down nice and short, but remember what's happening, because everybody would think, oh, Skinner's getting free fertiliser here. And it's the opposite. The sheep eat all the grass, and it's keeping this flock of 101 alive, but gradually you're decreasing or depleting the nutrients in the soil. So we have got to remedy that on the hay fields, but on the pollen and nectar fields, the sheep actually do a fantastic job. They graze the grass portion down, they'll graze the clover, the sainfoin and all the wildflowers down as well, but it helps to keep the nutrient level in the wildflower fields as low as possible. And that's why this last year, when I was taking you round those crops, we saw orchids galore, bee orchids, pyramidal orchids, and so the lower the fertility, the less competition there is from the grasses. And also we've got parasites of the grassland as well, things like yellow rattle, but the sheep all complement that. It's all part of management. So that deal between myself, Chris Skinner, and Will Pope, the very young shepherd, is absolutely ideal. It's a kind of symbiotic relationship. So good for you, Will. There's not many young people coming into farming, and even fewer wanting to do this, which is own a flock of sheep. And you have to get out early in the morning, Gudgeon, and at night as well. So a lot of people live very different lives, but to see this flock of sheep just grazing away peacefully is quite a lovely sight.
Well, we've heard a horse having a haircut. Now the sheep are giving this field a haircut.
Yes.
And I suppose at the end of the season they'll themselves get a haircut. And
yes,
that would be rather nice to have the shearing here, wouldn't it?
Yes, it would, except they'll have all given birth by then and move away, and it's a really tough job. My father used to shear sheep down in Australia. I've seen pictures of him doing that. They were just for wool, and that was merino sheep, and that was incredibly hard work. And pictures of him with 6 or 7 other shearers, and you were using hand clippers as well, which is an art form in itself, and just days gone by how hard life used to be for some people.
Got some emails to read out in just a few moments, but we come to the other side of the farm now, across the road and across to where we were the other day with these marvellous bees in the rabbit warrens here.
Yes.
And it looks like they're still here.
Yes, Matthew, they are. And I was just looking at the furthest rabbit hole, and there's flies going in and out of it. Look at that, that's really busy. And what they're doing, they're going in because the warren is very deep. It's going down at quite an angle. We can actually look down the holes. Rat's trying to dig one out here.
There's all this yellow sand.
Yes, so it's an excellent, cool, damp place for things like those large flies going down there to hibernate in under the ground. and it's ideal. And I came down a couple of nights ago, just taking Rat for his late evening walk. It's only about a quarter of a mile from the farm itself. And I saw a toad right outside one of these rabbit holes, and just watched for a minute or two. I kept the torch off and then turned it back on, and then after a minute or two it had completely disappeared and gone down underground.
We're up on a bit of a rise here.
Yes.
Presumably there's no water anywhere near here.
No, toads are really, they're reptiles, so they're amphibians, I should say, spend part of their life in water, as do frogs. And so I decided to bring my little camera down the next night and see if I could actually film them, because the weather is quite mild still, it's damp, it's the time that the amphibians leave the water or around the pond where they were born. And this was a fully grown toad, so it was probably 2 or 3 years old. Anyway, I decided to bring the camera down here, and then saw something that just caught my eye, and it was a newt. And I thought, what on earth is that doing here? And it's exactly the same thing as the toad. It was looking for somewhere to hibernate away from the water. And of course, newts spend a great deal of their time. They're sort of closely related in a funny sort of way to frogs and toads, but they have a tail, whereas toads and frogs don't have a tail. They're expert climbers. There are 3 species of newts in the UK. The smooth newt, which is the one I saw here, and that's a pretty good description of it. It's about 4 inches long, so the one I saw was an adult. And then there's the palmate newt, which is much more often seen in the northern half of the country. You do see them here, but you'll also see palmate newts up in Scotland, halfway up mountains, and in tarns and lochs and things like that, where it's much colder. And of course, newts don't get much publicity, but I suppose the most famous newt would be in William Shakespeare's 4th act.
Oh, go on. I feel something coming.
Yes, you do. Eye of newt and toe of frog. It's part of the witch's brew.
Oh, hubble bubble, toil and trouble.
Exactly that, yes.
Hubble double, yes.
Yes, so apart from that, they're not often seen, really. So I was quite excited to see the smooth newt going down there, and then beside it something just caught my eye, much larger, and I kind of did a whoop, but I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I saw a great crested newt. I don't think I've seen one in 50 odd years. I used to see them a lot.
A great crested newt.
Yes, it's the largest one of the species. It was a good 6 inches long. It was almost jet black, but just beneath the jet black skin you could see black dots, and those carry on the belly. I couldn't pick it up because I was in shock. That didn't stop me from picking up, but it's the most protected creature in the United Kingdom.
In fact, you're not allowed to pick it up.
No, exactly. You need a license to pick it up. So I couldn't turn the camera on because I didn't want to disturb it. You can't disturb their habitat. You can't disturb them. You can't pick them up and offer them for sale because they're very valuable. Only because if somebody's doing a planning permission next door to you, you've got a house there, and there's a pond nearby, and they find great crested newts there, that would nullify the planning application. They're powerful little creatures, so...
And you've got them here.
I got them here, but I just laid down on the track. Rat was licking the side of my face and thought I'd suddenly been taken ill, and I looked down and I could see the orange belly underneath, still orange, and it's doing spring. They grow these huge crests. We've got some horses looking at us on the other side of the newly planted hedge, but there's a reason for them to come here. They're left the water environment where they spend quite a bit of the summer, and they move to hibernation sites, and they can go over ground quite a distance. But what's happened, the conditions were just right in the last 2 days, and we've had something called a mass migration, which is I got really excited about. So I'll come down over the next few nights and actually just observe.
But you didn't know you had them?
No, I haven't seen them. They've been here, but as I said, you don't come across them very often because they're so well camouflaged. They're discreet. They move mainly at night. They're nocturnal. Lots of things eat them, so they have to be careful. Things like grass snakes will eat them, stoats, weasels. A cat will even have a go, but with the great crested newt, it's also called the warty newt because they're covered, and that's the first thing that I saw, all the little sort of spots over the body of the newt, absolutely exquisitely beautiful, and they can sort of suffer damage if something picks them up. It can bite a limb off, and you sometimes see a three-legged newt, but they've got a trick up their sleeves, if you excuse it, pun, because they can grow new limbs. If they lose a leg or part of a tail or the whole front limb, they can grow another one, which is quite amazing. So it's lovely to have them here. I'm very cautious not to disturb them because this is now their home for the winter. They're hibernating with the toads, probably with the odd grass snake and maybe an adder, all down the rabbit warren here. And the reason that I've got so many amphibians and reptiles here, normally we go and look in the woodland under the sheets of tin for slow worms, one of the reptiles that live at the farm. But if we just walk up the hedge here a little bit, Rat's taking objection to the horse. But you can see the newly planted hedge here, both sides of the track. It's been there close to 20 years, so it's still a new boy in the town. But when the hedges were planted, there were little sleeves put all round each individual hawthorn. There's hazel there, there's dogwood, there's spindle further down. But I did something to get good germination for the little things. And if I scrape away the grass here, what we should have is a huge layer of plastic about 2 inches down. It should get to it.
Well, like a membrane.
Here we go. Here it is, deeper than I thought. And when I first planted the hedges, let me catch this dog. This is so disruptive. He's doing himself out of a job before long. We don't need the horses barking at. Thank you. That's deeper than I thought. Well, we've got a horse one side of the hedge and a mad dog, an Englishman, the other side of the hedge. Look, there it is.
Yeah, and that shows how plastic doesn't degenerate.
It's perfect, isn't it? And it's 2 inches under the soil.
And that's 20
because
plus
the hedge
years
has
ago.
been cut, you see, and grass has grown over the top of it. But when the hedges first went in, that was exposed on the top soil, and it was perfect for grass snakes and the frogs and toads to hide under during the daylight hours. The newts are really welcome here because they're scarce, particularly great crested newts have declined hugely. Anyway, the reason they're here is not just the plastic under the hedge so they can sort of use it as a motorway to get here safely, but just over there are 2 small ponds, and I've got 2 newly created ones just on the other side of the track, so the habitat is right for them. But particularly with great crested newts, they're not particularly successful at breeding. Frogs and toads have what's called external fertilisation. In other words, the male frog or the male toad will grip the female just behind her front legs and squeeze her tight, and he releases a sperm onto the spawn after it's laid. But with newts, it's internal fertilisation, but they haven't quite worked out how to do it properly. So the male drops a sperm on the bottom of the pond. It has to be still water or it'll get washed away, and he has to then manoeuvre the female over the top of it, and she then sort of sucks up the little sperm ball called a spermatophore, and the fertilisation's internal. Once she's fertilised, then the female then lays her eggs on the underside of leaves, even on algae as well, on the underside of leaves, and she wraps each egg individually, and she can probably lay 100 or 200 eggs over the course of the following week. and they then hatch out and they form little tadpoles, and then sort of carry on the life cycle as a tadpole. But they're very vulnerable, particularly if there's fish in the pond or anything like that. But the newts are kind of vegetarian as well. They will eat those as well as some small vegetarian matter in the pond. They will also eat the Daphnia and Cyclops, which we visited early on this year when the ponds at the farm went sort of blood red with millions of those. That's perfect food for the newts. So there we are. Yeah, so I think people used to eat newts years ago, you know. I think they did. You know, is that where nutritious comes from?
Oh, no. Well, lovely to join you, Chris, today and hear the newts headlines.
There we are. And that dog seems to know we're finished and he's headed off back to the truck. You wait till I catch him.
Horses don't seem too bothered either. The ducks at High Ash Farm going in to roost for an evening. Hey everyone, it's Matthew here, and if you've been enjoying our countryside podcasts, we've got a small favour to ask.
Yes, Matthew. What we're going to do is to ask for a small donation to help run the podcast, and any surplus goes for conservation at High Ash Farm here. And so it's really important. We'd both love to keep the podcast going, and that duck agrees with me, I think.
Well, it's straightforward to donate. You can make a one-off donation or set up a small monthly contribution, and the address is highashfarm.com/podcast.
We're hugely grateful for any support. It means we can keep sharing the stories of the countryside, which I love doing each week, but it's that small amount of cost we need to cover. So thank you very much in advance.
Walking out into one of the fields now, and I've got a handful of emails that you've kindly sent in. So thanks for all the letters here. And one of them from Kerry says, "Dear Chris, just been listening. An old chap that I knew who'd been collecting mushrooms most of his life gave me a spare bag of them that he'd collected. He had the rest for his dinner. When I came to open the bag later, I discovered they were yellow stainers. He didn't suffer a side effect, but needless to say, I wasn't even prepared to try them myself. He had confused them with young field mushrooms." And here's something rather gruesome, Chris. Just to finish Kerry's note, on another occasion I collected oyster mushrooms, put them on the dashboard of my car and forgot about them. And when I came back, they were... the whole car dashboard was covered in maggots.
We covered that a little bit last week when somebody wrote in and said why I think it was his father had used salt on the underside of the field mushroom caps, and that was for the very same reason. And yellow stainers are probably the commonest mushroom for causing quite severe gastric upsets. Might not be fatal, but certainly for most people, if you eat them, because they look like a field mushroom, they peel as well, but when you pull them out of the ground, the little stipe or the stalk that they're on is usually chrome yellow. It's very distinctive at the base, and the smell is slightly different. Oh, just look above us, Matthew. Several hundred rooks, crows and jackdaws just spiralling up. And this is the time, if you're out in the countryside doing second half of October and into November, they do aerial displays. They're pairing up already, so when you look at them, although we've got several hundred going over us, they're nearly all in pairs. And when two get together, the male will suddenly corkscrew down to the ground. We might be lucky and see this happening. And they're actually doing courtship displays. There they go, look, down there. Two dive to the ground and still spiralling. Occasionally they fly upside down. Two dropped out of the flock and flew straight down. There's one came beside us. And some over here, they might fly back and drop down, and it's just part of forming a pair bond. And you wouldn't think it'd be happening at this time of the year. And if you're out in your garden, you aren't fortunate enough to be out in a big field like we are today, and you hear bird song. It's like to be robins start singing again now to set up a territory. Male robins mainly doing the singing, and they set their territory up by singing in it. So it's a kind of sound boundary they use. You don't know where the divisions are between one territory and the next, but it's lovely to hear. And suddenly the sky's cleared. Look in front of us, there's still some behind us. We might see some more
just up here,
spiraling
look
coming
at that.
down.
Very close to
They
us.
get together, and there, watch those two carefully. There, they're doing a corkscrewing. You're spoilt. Things to watch out for at this time of the year. So we've come out, we're carrying on after that question, our little fungal foray. And at this time of the year, some of the ones we visit are really colourful. I hope to do in the next week or two fly agarics, those large blood red ones with white spots on the top. Rat's found something over there in amongst a bramble patch. Thank goodness he's out of the way. You can stay down there, you ghastly dog. And in front of us...
Oh, these look like leaves, but on closer inspection, no.
No. What, these?
These are red.
They're
Red.
bright red, yes.
Yes, they're not leaves, are they?
No, they're wax caps. And there's two species here. This is the black wax cap, and this is a scarlet wax cap. And they grow on pastures, they will grow on people's lawns, and they're quite difficult to find. And I've sort of put a little bit of paper on a plant here, which is what they usually grow next to, which is this, which is knapweed, also called hardheads. And they seem to have a relationship with this plant on these pollen and nectar fields. You can see there's lots of clover here. But this time of the year, they will, as I said, they will grow in people's lawns, and you have this splash of bright red colour. And funny enough, although I say many of the fungi we talk about are not edible and they'll give you a stomach upset, these waxy black caps, waxy web caps here, are actually edible, and when you cook them, it's bright red in the frying pan, so a little bit unusual. So there we are. So lots of, each week we could visit the farm here right through the year and choose different fungal species. So
they're not that big, are they? And they're bright
the black
red.
wax caps. Look, and there's about there's a dozen species of waxy caps. They're called wax caps because if I did pick one, and you just rub your finger, they're very small and delicate. When you just have a feel on the top, you can see where the wax name comes from.
Yes.
Wax cap. It's very sort of shiny
Got
and
a
waxy
waxy-
without being wet.
Yes, like a crayon.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, really interesting little species. And again, they're all breaking down some of the humus and the organic matter in the soil underneath us. And this is very high organic matter, but very low fertility. And if we brought a spade with us and just dug in and turned any of the little clods over, it's absolutely full of earthworms, very high worm population. You can see if I just part the grass a little bit, the whole ground is a worm cast, look. And of course that's bringing up nutrients. Look at that. Yeah. Perfect soil. This is heavy clay.
That's lovely, isn't
and
it?
Rub it between my fingers and my hand's still clean. And that's what you call good soil with a good crumb structure. Here we are. Well, we've got some more questions to do, look, because we'll be here all day at this rate. That's because of that dog.
Roger in Felixstowe says you were speaking about the importance of ivy and pollinators. I've got a fence covered in ivy in full flower, and I counted 4 red admirals. Numerous bumblebees, bees, hoverflies. Years ago, when beach fishing, I used to see occasionally many red admirals flying along the beaches at this time of year, and I thought at the time they were getting ready to migrate. I've heard that many red admirals overwinter now due to climate change, but perhaps you have knowledge of this.
Yes, I have knowledge of them migrating, and that's quite well documented. And funny enough, the ones that migrated here, the red admirals that came up from perhaps the Mediterranean region, they flew up with a southerly wind which brought them up northwards, and they're very, very strong flyers. They can easily do 20, 30, 40 miles in a day, and then they stop up and feed. They have the migratory instinct in them, but gradually, because of the mild winters, some manage to stay over winter and they can lose that instinct to migrate. And red admirals have been found at High Ash Farm, not by me, but by a moth enthusiast, near the top of the oak trees on the farm, but not secreted in the ivy like some of our English species, like peacock butterflies and commas and brimstone butterflies will hibernate in ivy. But no, not in all the cover, right out in the open with their wings shut, because the weather's just been mild enough not to kill them. So they go into kind of torpor, which is almost like a hibernation, like a sleep, and metabolism goes right down. And so there seems to now be a second lot, if you like, of red admiral butterflies that are overwintering and are staying. And I found them hibernating for the first time last year under one of the little bridges on the farm, shone the torch on them, and then almost in shock, it was a red admiral. Never found one before by myself actually hibernating here. So that just, the proof of the pudding, as they say, is in the eating.
Finally, we'll go to Lancing, West Sussex, where Jenny Williams is tuned in. And Jenny sent us a photograph, the wonderful sounds you heard with the ducks at the end of last week's podcast. And there's the photograph of Jenny's speaker that she was listening to the podcast on, and Jenny's cat getting very interested in the ducks. Look, there he is.
Yes, just peering into the speaker.
Ivy.
It's Ivy the cat.
Oh, yes. Ivy the cat.
Yes, very topical name for our for the podcast we've been doing in the last week.
I expect Ivy's run a mile after Rat's performance this week.
Yes, I think so. It's even frightened me. I'm glad Rat's actually ran away from me.
Oh no, he's coming back. Look.
Oh no, he is. He's coming back. Here comes trouble. I talked that one up. He's been under that old oak tree. I know there's little owls in there, and there's also a hollow at the bottom of the tree. He's heading back this way.
We love to get your emails. It's chris@countrysidepodcast.co.uk. Signing off for another week here just outside Norwich at High Ash Farm with Chris Skinner.
Thank you, everybody.
This is a Soundyard production. Music is by Tom Harris.
Hello, it's Anna and Sophie from Soundyard here. Our new service, Spoken Stories, is an incredible experience where we record the stories and voice of your loved one, which you can then hold on to forever.
It makes for an incredible gift, and anyone can make one. Take a listen to this. It beautifully captures the thoughts and feelings of life from a 6-year-old's perspective.
I'm 6 years old and I love running around. I can run very, very fast, but I'm even faster on my bike. That's why I love biking. It makes me feel energetic. And also I bike loads of places. I like doing sports like dodgeball. The people that are in charge in the world, well, I think that there should be no one in charge at all. So everyone's in charge. So there's no person that's in charge. So everyone is a bit more free. That's what I think. Well, what I try to change at the moment is global warming. It's when us humans litter, destroy the planet and all its nature. That's global warming. It makes me feel sad. And also, if us humans keep doing that, it could destroy the whole planet Earth, and then all of the human beings will be destroyed. I try to stop global warming, and also in my coat pocket I have a bit of Kit Kat litter I found on the floor once. I love the planet more than anything. Grown-ups should be stopping global warming, because grown-ups are more powerful than kids. But if kids can be more powerful than grown-ups, kids and grown-ups can work together and do it. Kids should be able to do the same things as grown-ups. They should have more rights. Well, I love myself because that I believe in a lot of things. That's what I love about myself. I like being a kid, but because when I'm a grown up, I'm gonna have my own kids because that's what I want. And also, I'm a bit worried to have kids, and I'm still gonna be a kid for like a long time. So I'm glad that's actually gonna happen. I'm glad I'm gonna stay a kid for a long time. I'm gonna have kids because I want to know what it feels like to be a parent. I'm gonna be a good parent.
Isn't that just gorgeous? If you'd like to find out more about recording a spoken story of your own, or you'd like to buy this as a present for someone, take a look at our website, www.soundyard.org/spoken stories, and take advantage of our introductory offer. Alternatively, you can get in touch via email, hello@soundyard.org.
And if the internet isn't an option, you can leave a message with your details on our landline number. It's 01603 273 899, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can.